The late 1960s were a time of seismic cultural shifts, a summer of love that promised peace and enlightenment. But as the decade drew to a close, a shadow fell over Northern California, a darkness that crept in from the quiet, lonely roads on the outskirts of society. Beneath the idyllic surface of suburban life, a new kind of fear was taking root, one that would grip the public imagination and leave a scar on the American psyche that has never fully healed. It began not with a roar, but with a whisper, a series of brutal, seemingly random attacks that appeared to have no motive and no connection. A phantom was stalking the Bay Area, a predator who would soon give himself a name and in doing so, become a living symbol of faceless, unknowable evil. The story begins on a cold December night in 1968, on a desolate lover's lane in Benicia. Two high school students, seeking a moment of privacy, found themselves in the crosshairs of a terrifying ordeal. Their lives were extinguished with a cold, methodical precision that sent a ripple of unease through the community. The act was so senseless, so devoid of typical criminal reasoning, that law enforcement initially struggled to find a foothold. 6 months later, the phantom struck again. Another young couple, this time at Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo, was ambushed in their car. The attacker fired methodically into the vehicle before melting back into the darkness. This time, however, one victim survived, providing the first fleeting description of the man. The horror was no longer an isolated incident. It was a pattern, but the true terror was yet to come. Less than an hour after the second attack, a call was placed to the Vallejo Police Department. A calm, monotone voice took credit for the shootings and for the murders the previous December. A chilling new chapter had begun. On August 1, 1969, the game changed. 3 nearly identical letters arrived at the offices of the Vallejo Times-Herald *, the San Francisco Chronicle *, and the San Francisco Examiner *. Penned in crude, blocky handwriting, the author claimed responsibility for the attacks. He provided details that only the killer could know, proving his claim beyond any doubt. But it was the contents of the letters that escalated the situation from a local crime spree to a national obsession. Each letter contained 1/3 of a bizarre 408-symbol cryptogram. The writer demanded the newspapers publish his cipher on their front pages, threatening more violence if they failed to comply. He signed off not with a name but with a symbol, a circle with a crosshairs drawn through it. He called himself the Zodiac. The cipher became a national puzzle. The FBI's best cryptographers, naval intelligence experts, and amateur sleuths across the country raced to decode the message, hoping it would reveal the killer's identity. Within a week, a high school teacher and his wife from Salinas, Donald and Betty Hardin, cracked the code. The message, riddled with misspellings and grammatical errors, was not a confession or a name. It was a terrifying glimpse into a disturbed mind, a rambling manifesto about the thrill of killing and a bizarre belief that his victims would become his slaves in the afterlife. The message was designed not to inform, but to terrorize. It was a declaration of intent, a promise of more to come. The Zodiac wasn't just a murderer. He was a performer, and he had just seized the biggest stage in the world. The media, unwittingly, had become his accomplice. The publication of the letters and the decoded cipher ignited a firestorm of public panic. Fear, once confined to the quiet roads of Vallejo and Benicia, now spread like a virus across the entire Bay Area. The Zodiac's crosshair symbol became an icon of dread, appearing on front pages and television screens. He was no longer a faceless assailant. He was a media personality, a boogeyman who communicated directly with the public. He thrived on the attention, relishing the chaos he had created. He proved this just 2 months later in the broad daylight of a sunny September afternoon at Lake Berryessa. He approached another young couple, this time wearing a hooded executioner's costume adorned with his symbol. After tying them up, he stabbed them repeatedly before calmly walking away. Once again, he reported his own crime, calling the Napa County Sheriff's Office from a payphone, leaving the receiver dangling as a final, taunting gesture. The police were caught in an impossible position. They were hunting a killer who left behind few traditional clues but saturated the investigation with cryptic letters, threats, and taunts. Evidence rooms filled with handwritten notes, bizarre diagrams, and fragments of clothing. Task forces were formed, combining the efforts of multiple jurisdictions, but the Zodiac always seemed to be one step ahead. He changed his methods, his locations, his victim profiles. The investigation became a sprawling, frustrating puzzle. Detectives pored over maps, trying to find a geographic center to his crimes. They analyzed his handwriting, his psychological profile, his choice of words. He claimed to have a death machine and threatened to blow up a school bus. He sent a piece of a victim's bloody shirt to prove his claims. Each letter was a calculated move, designed to sow more fear and mock the authorities who seemed powerless to stop him. The police sketch of a bespectacled, heavy-set man became ubiquitous, but it led nowhere. He was a ghost, a specter haunting the city, his identity as encrypted as his ciphers. As the years passed and the letters became more sporadic, the official investigation began to cool. The Zodiac's reign of terror seemingly ended as abruptly as it began. But the void left by his silence was quickly filled by suspicion and speculation. The search for the Zodiac's identity turned from an active police hunt into a cottage industry for amateur detectives, authors, and obsessives. Dozens of individuals have been named as potential suspects, their lives and histories dissected for any parallel to the killer's profile. The most prominent suspect, Arthur Lee Allen, was a convicted child molester who lived in Vallejo, owned the same brand of typewriter used in some letters, and wore a watch with the Zodiac symbol. He was interviewed by police, his home was searched, and he was under surveillance for years, but no definitive evidence ever linked him to the crimes. Other names have surfaced, from troubled loners to respected professionals, each theory supported by a web of circumstantial evidence, handwriting comparisons, and cryptic connections. Decades later, the case remains officially open and unsolved. The Zodiac Killer, who claimed at least 5 lives and possibly dozens more, has never been identified. His last confirmed letter arrived in 1974, and then silence. Did he die? Was he incarcerated for another crime? Or did he simply stop, satisfied with the legacy of fear he had created? The questions linger, hanging in the fog-laden air of San Francisco. The files grow thicker, filled with dead ends and tantalizing possibilities. New technologies like DNA analysis have offered fleeting moments of hope, but even these have failed to provide a conclusive answer. The Zodiac's crosshair symbol remains a chilling reminder of a mystery that endures, a testament to the fact that sometimes the monster is never caught, and the story has no final chapter. He is more than a man. He is a myth, a dark legend woven into the fabric of American crime history, a puzzle with a missing piece that may never be found.